Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Silver Lyming. I'm Anne Desjardins, your host, and I am just so excited to be here. I love having this podcast so that I can share more with my listeners about A, awareness about Lyme and tick-borne illness, B, that not everything is so terrible about it, and C, that you can actually get better. Today, I have a really wonderful guest with me. I'm just really excited for her to share more about her story. I am already truly humbled just by her energy and her presence and what she offers to our community. It is a true honor to introduce you to Samantha Sloves. She is also known as my Lyme coach. You can see down there in the bottom left corner her name. But welcome to my show today, Samantha. Again, I am really, truly honored to have you. She shared so much with me and just she encompasses such great energy. She has a heart to serve people. She's a connector. She works with young women to help to educate them on things about life that really actually matter in their language and how they understand things through a certain program she's designed. And it's just a truly beautiful gift that she's given to the community that way. And I'll let her talk more about this. But then she's also become a life coach to help people have an accountability partner in a sense. What you've designed through what I'll let you share too is just fantastic. And I'm so just encouraged that to know, again, there's people like you out there to help people in our Lyme community to get better and that you've gotten better yourself. You've gone through the fire yourself. I'm kind of looking at your candle back there and I'm like, yeah, she's burning bright. This is fantastic. But she's gone through hell and back, the flames of burning like crap with Lyme and getting better and the true phoenix of rebirth and just coming back and being able to again serve on a purpose that is more like me, that I feel like we're on a little bit of missions from God, or rather huge missions from God to serve. So without further ado, Samantha, if you don't mind, could you please share a little bit more with us about your story, how you got involved with this world called Lyme and tick-borne illness, please?
Yes, thank you so much for having me and for the enormous welcome. I am ear to ear. I'm so glad that we met. Truly, I feel our energy already. And I got involved with this tick community, and at any time I hear the word tick, I still to this day am like, how does something so tiny have so just this enormous power over our body? It's disturbing. It's disgusting. It's crazy.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. It's been like 10 years and I still can't. I can and I can't. It's still, when you take a step back from it and then you're really asked a question where you're really thoughtfully thinking about it, like right now, it's one of those moments where you're like, wow. But it was when I was 14 years old, I woke up, I had the state test, and I remember having the state test because I woke up, it was around 6 a.m, and I had a rash everywhere. And not everywhere, but it was itchy. It was more like a welt kind of a thing. It was raised. It was all over my chest, all over my chest, my arms, the back of one of my legs. And no, there was no bullseye that I saw, but it was incredibly itchy. And I had, like I said, the state test. And in New York, you have to take your state test. There's no real getting out of it. And I remember.
Are you saying a state test? STATE state test?
Yes.
I don't know about this. What is this?
Oh, okay. So in New York, you have to take the state test. It's every year you have to take this test. It's just a thing you do in middle school.
It's academics?
Yeah.
Okay.
In school.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, that's what I was missing. I was like, are we talking about Lyme? Do they make you test every year?
No. Nothing to do with Lyme. Nothing to do with Lyme.
Thanks. That's what I was a little bit confused.
This is in school. This is pre me knowing anything.
Okay.
About Lyme.
Sorry. Thank you.
And this state test was like the big deal. This was pre-Lyme, pre anything. This was, I'm a 14-year-old girl. All that matters to me is getting into school and, making sure that everything's good and, showing up to my Italian class so I can continue my A streak. And, I was doing really well in Italian. I had my little group of girls and, I just wanted to like continue on. I had no idea what was coming. No clue. So point being is my parents said, if you get through the state test today, we'll get you Carvel after school. And if you get really itchy, then we'll go to the nurse and get a Benadryl. So I got through the state test, went to the nurse, got my Benadryl, came home early, got my Carvel. And it turned into years of problems that first day of hives in 8th grade. I had no clue what was happening and no clue what it would turn into. No one did. I mean, who could predict? I thought maybe I was like allergic to like a food or, everyone thought it was just all these random things. But yeah, that's how it started. That's when I first came into contact at 14.
Okay. So that makes a little bit more sense because that's why I was like, we were talking about a rash and then state test. So that's why my brain, I just assumed you were talking about some kind of a Lyme test. And I was like, okay, here we go. Yeah. Understand. So then is that then kind of like your first symptom?
That was my first symptom.
Yeah.
And it led to, so my first symptom was the rash. I went to the pediatrician. The pediatrician sent me to the allergist. The allergist sent me to the dermatologist. The dermatologist sent me to the rheumatologist. The rheumatologist sent me to the GI, and the list goes on. And for months, they were poking and prodding me. Nobody knew what was wrong. And as they were doing that, the rash wasn't going away. They were putting me on a ton of medication. And I was starting to get, not only was the rash there, but I had horrible headaches and horrible sensitivity to light that I was wearing sunglasses all the time. The light was like a vampire. And then I started having, in May, that happened in April, the rash. May, I started having tiny amount of joint pain. And by June, it was severe. Very severe, the joint pain. The first interaction I had with a Lyme doctor was about 2.5 months into this. And they told me while we were going to the dermatologist, the rheumatologist, everyone, 2.5 months into it, the Lyme doctor said, you have Lyme and Bartonella and Babesia. And they were waiting on a few other tests from whether it was IGeneX or something else. They were waiting on another test. And those tests that we hadn't gotten back yet, he said, I want to start you on antibiotics and eventually on Netpron. And I started on them. And I was only on them for about a week. And my pediatrician heard that I was on those medications and seeing that doctor. He said, no, you can't see a Lyme doctor. You need to go to an infectious disease doctor. Lyme doctors, no, they don't know what they're talking about. Go to an infectious disease doctor. Now, keep in mind, I'm 14. So what I want, it's not really so much of a say. Like my parents are calling the shots.
Yeah.
And doing what they think is best for me, whether it is or it isn't. So we went to an infectious disease doctor. He ripped me off the medication, discredited the labs, and I had positive Lyme tests from Quest and LabCorp, all the strands, everything. And he didn't care. He said, you were on the antibiotics for a week or two, you're good. Took me off of it. And that was the last time I saw a Lyme doctor for 2.5 years.
Oh.
And I could tell that I was going to be, I could tell that it was the wrong decision. I just didn't know how wrong. And it took a lot of work for me personally, to get through that feeling of what could have been if I stayed, what could have been, would I have never gotten so sick, would I have never been in those hospitals. It was like a lot of just personal work on myself, on anger, on resentment. It was not something, would my parents ever take me from one doctor to another if they knew what would happen? No, but they didn't know. And they have a pediatrician telling them this is what's best for your daughter. So of course they're going to listen. So it took a lot of work for me to get over that. And it was very difficult.
I can only imagine. I'm sitting here crying a little bit for you, just, again, as an outsider looking in on that and knowing some of the own things that I've gone through with my own questions about things. It took me 7 years to get a diagnosis and like similar questions. And it's definitely something that you really have to process. I kind of come out at the end of like, we all go through what we have to evolve into the beings that we need to be. Whether that makes that more comfortable or not, but it's still really hard. And I think as a young person, I was a grown-up going through this, so I could make my own choices. And I can really appreciate the attitude that you're taking in that you know that your parents were ultimately doing their best to serve you right and well and do the best that they could for you. But you didn't have control over that situation. And you personally, did you share with your parents? Were you able to vocalize that at that time, or that's something that kind of came to you later and that wasn't the right choice?
That was something that I didn't feel was the right choice at the time. I definitely didn't feel like I was on the right path. I know I was very confused. Like, this doctor gave me a diagnosis. We have the answer. Why are we going to all these doctors who don't have the answers? Like, he said it was Lyme disease. He has the medicine. Why are we going to this hospital when they're just going to keep poking me and they don't have the answer? And they're not even treating me well. And I'm not getting better. So why can't we just go back to the place where he has an answer and give it another shot? And yes, I'm giving you a very short snippet. It wasn't so black and white. And it never is. But it's still hard to think back on it, even now and after, working through it. And, I think it's the hardest when you already can't feel how you would like to feel, but then you can't really make the decisions. And I'm not saying that all the decisions that I think I would have made or I told my parents I would have made would have been the right ones.
Sure.
But I do think that there are some that would have been different. And I also have come to understand that my parents, they love me very much. And I know that. And I know they would do nothing that would ever cause me
yes.
They would never want me to suffer.
Yes.
But in the moment, it felt like, you're not listening to me. Why can't you just listen to me? I know my body. You're not listening to my body. You're not listening to me. You don't know what's right. You're not a doctor. And that is what it felt like. And I'm not sharing this to make my parents look bad. I feel like I want to say that for the record. I'm saying that because I think there could be kids listening to this. And I think there could also be parents on the other side listening to this saying that they hear their kids saying that and they don't know what to do, or they're hearing their parents say, we're just looking out for you and we're doing what's best for you, even though in 10 years, it may not have been the right decision. And I think it's guilt And I think it's anger. And I think it's on both sides. They're going to feel one or the other. And there's no one holding your hand. There's no one telling you what the right decision is. You may take antibiotics and not get better. You may take the herbal remedy and not get better. You may go to the rheumatologist and you may get better. You may take the antibiotics and you may get better. You just don't know. You just can't predict the future. And that's what sucks, is you don't know, but you think you do.
Yes.
And that's why you need to humble yourself and realize you don't know. And sometimes neither do the doctors.
Amen. You give me chill bumps as you were talking, just because it's like God's coming through you, right? Like these words are going to find the right people, and they have so much power, because we think about this thing called Lyme disease and tick-borne illness and how confusing and complicated it really is, and that there really seems to be no clear delineated answers, yes or no, you have this, you don't, we know that this is right, we know that this is wrong. It's very challenging. And I can say, when there's something so innate within your being that's screaming that this is the right answer, you've got to listen to it. And whether it's a child telling their parents, whomever is that knowledge is coming through, that you know that that's it. It's got to be this. It's got to be. You've got to listen to that, and you've got to explore that at whatever costs, because you know your body the best. You are ultimately the one inside there
100%.
that knows it. Yeah. And so I feel bad for parents, because, again, anybody in the situation, when they're not actually inside this body, they're just looking at it from the outside. It's not them having any sensations. That's right. And it's so hard for them to know. And they, of course, meant you no harm. They were doing everything they could to fix you, to get you better, to make you healthy again, to make you feel well. And going by standard CDC or whomever it is that makes these decisions on whom we're really supposed to converse with about Lyme and tick-borne illness. And I have a lot of beef with the standard testing, just as well as I do. It's 50% accurate at best. And it's just a travesty for people to actually be based on some criteria that, even through the CDC's own admissions, is not a fair way to gauge this illness or how it actually works. And so there's just so much that's done disservice-wise to this population, just through misunderstanding or not quite the right perspective on the information that's available. And through conversations like yours and mine, we start to push the boundaries, right? We start to open this up a little bit more for people to see that it's not the standard textbook thing that they tell you it is all the time. I was so excited when I found out what was wrong with me, because I figured I'd take my 30 days of doxycycline and be on my way. Ha. Little did I know. I knew nothing about co-infections. You mentioned that you had two. I knew nothing about the cycle of the replication of the bacteria or the spirochete. It's much different. It's a lot longer. It takes a lot more medication to fix. Whether antibiotics can actually treat something long-term anymore, that's another good question. We don't really know. Maybe herbs are the better way to go, but figuring out each person's body is what has to happen. But getting that true diagnosis is step one. And without that, you're just throwing darts at the board. And that's what I felt like I was doing a lot too. It's just like trying to make something work to make myself feel better.
I don't even think getting the right diagnosis is step one. I think that's step 3. I think getting to the right doctor is step 1.
Yes.
Because forget getting to the right doctor. For me, it was staying with the right doctor.
Yeah.
I mean, that was really the challenge for me. But I think getting to the right doctor, getting the right diagnosis, getting the right treatment for your body, and sticking to the right treatment. I think it's very common for people to come on and off of treatment way too quickly because of a Herxheimer and because it's hard and it's a lifestyle adjustment. And I think that it's so hard to implement the changes that we so commonly have to. And it's beyond words. I'm basically stuttering out of frustration of how hard it is to do it and how it shouldn't be. And it's too hard.
Yes.
But I guess the lesson that you naturally learn from going through something like this is that nothing good comes easy or quick. There is no magic pill.
Yes.
My parents would always say, Samantha, we know you want the magic pill. I just wanted a magic pill. That's all I wanted was a magic pill. Where's the magic bullet? Where is it? Like, where is it? Because if it was here, I would have found it by now.
Yes.
That's all I wanted. I expected everything like overnight to happen. And I learned that doesn't work and it doesn't happen.
Yes. That's, I think, one of the greatest lessons in a sense through this is like the lesson of patience and how to be patient, because you damn well better be if you're going to make it through this. And it is hard for people because I think we've become such a fast society, right? We've got everything at our fingertips. You order something on Amazon, they've got same day delivery. We want it now. Let's go. Nobody wants to wait. Nobody wants a hard thing.
Priority.
We see pharmaceuticals. You take a pill, you're supposed to be better. What's going on? Why is this not working? And so tell me then what happened. So 2.5 years later, did you went to the infectious disease route, and then did you get back to a Lyme doctor? Like how did you ultimately wind up getting better then? What changed there?
Well, I spent the 2.5 years going in and out of hospitals, being misdiagnosed and basically poisoned by all of the things that they were treating me with. And I think, that was just, in a nutshell, very difficult. When I started to get, my road back to a Lyme doctor was essentially laying out the facts that I have not gotten better for 2.5 years. We've done it your way. And we are now going back to a Lyme doctor. We went to a doctor through a friend of a friend who knows the doctor. He's in Connecticut. And we saw him. I went on all of his regimens. I think, even though I didn't see actual results, I do believe that those antibiotics were killing things off. I think, yes, maybe I wasn't running a marathon, but I do think it was helping and doing its job. I then switched by the advice of him in Connecticut. That doctor advised to go to a colleague of his. And his advice was to go back to the original doctor from 2.5 years ago. Mm-hmm. That my parents were wary to go back to because they in their heads, the pediatrician said, don't go there. And I was like, enough, this is what we're doing. And I don't know what the way to word it is, but at that point I was we're doing it my way. It wasn't as clear cut as that making it, but in the sense of we're doing it my way, but it was definitely your stuff hasn't worked. And when I would continuously get tested for blood in all the hospitals, when we were doing all these misdiagnosis and all the stuff that I was doing it their way, I continuously had positive Lyme results that they would look into, and then just say, maybe look into that later. So for me, it was every time they would say that, it was why aren't we at the Lyme doctors? Why aren't we at the Lyme doctors? What is going on with that? Why are we looking into it later? And then they would say oh, you have so much else going on. We can focus that on a later date. During those 2 years, it was some of the hardest days in my life. I wasn't able to really eat. I was very, very close to a feeding tube in my stomach. I was hospitalized because of that. I couldn't eat. I had pneumonia, horrible, horrible pneumonia. There was a lot that was just horrible. And it was a very, very challenging time. So during that time was when they kept misdiagnosing me with all these diseases. And then finally, I came off of all the medication that I believe was poisoning me because they were treating me for things that I don't have. Mm. So it was a real runaround. I got to the Lyme doctor eventually, went on all his treatments, eventually ended up into a rehab for physical therapy, occupational therapy, swimming therapy. What is it? Aquatics? I don't know the word. So I ended up going there. And when I went there, and throughout the process, I had seen a physical therapist when I was out of hospitals very regularly. And he was amazing. I saw him for years. And he's a great physical therapist, but on a human level, he was instrumental. He was there for me. I mean, like, he owns like a lot of different physical therapy facilities in the area, but like, he should be credited for that. His name is Brian. But to me, he wasn't even a physical therapist. He was someone who was so there for me. And I could never repay him for that or express to him how much that meant to me. And to this day, I still rave about him. And anytime I'm having like a weird day or I have a memory about something, I still think of him and I text him on random moments. And I'm like thinking of you, like, truly, because he, on the first day I met him, gave me his cell phone and he was like, if you ever need me, you call me. And he could tell how hard it had been without me saying a word. He could just tell in my eyes. And it was the first time that I felt like hope, really, from another person, because I had been very isolated. And he was someone in the medical field that I could really trust and feel comfortable with. And there's not a lot of people that you can do that with. And Brian was somebody that is family now to me. And I mean, poor Brian became like my family therapist. We all would like freaking call him. But we love him, and he's someone that I'm forever grateful for. But your question was something about getting back to the Lyme doctor. I got back to the Lyme doctor when I told my parents, like, enough, we're going back. And we went back to the doctor in Connecticut. We're doing all these like antibiotics. Then he said, go to a colleague. In between seeing him and the colleague, we went to a very, very natural doctor. She had me on, very extreme diet and whatnot. And I tried everything. I tried the diet. I tried a guy with a ton of herbs in his like literal garage who somebody said like they got out of a wheelchair because of it. Then we went to like all the like above board people in the city who were like the crazy Lyme, not crazy, but like, the great Lyme specialists. We went to everyone and tried everything: natural, herbal, integrative, antibiotics. I went to this rehab. I started doing a lot of physical therapy. I saw a big breakthrough when I think I was truly off of everything and just on minimal like maintenance for certain things. And I went on a medication for some neuropathy that I have in my legs from all of the neurological issues from the Lyme and Bartonella and everything. And I saw a lot of progress when that happened. And I still maintain a lot of the lifestyle changes. I don't, eat anything moldy. That was one of the big concerns. I don't eat like blue cheese ever. I don't eat mushrooms. There's like weird things that like, like when you're out to dinner, you kind of just like, no, I don't want that. And there's other things that I'm like very careful about that I don't think I would ever be aware of before. I am pretty particular with like gluten and dairy. That's not to say I'm not perfect and that I stick to it 1,000% every single day, but I do my best. And I don't eat I don't eat a lot of like chemicals in my diet, like the pre-made foods. that you would just buy. I try very hard to really limit that unless I'm like really on the go. I really do my best, which was a big change for me. And, when I feel a bit, kind of iffy, I realize maybe I'm like not eating right, or maybe I'm, doing something in my days that's not right, and I try and correct it. I think something that I got used to doing, or not even me used to doing, but the doctors doing, was, oh, you have a headache, here's a pill. Oh, you have a stomach ache, here's a pill. And I think that was something that once I got to a point of high functionality, I was like, oh, I don't feel good, let me get a pill. And it was because it was how I was wired from being in hospitals for so long, that it was what was natural and what was like expected. Like, now, when I have some nausea, I drink hot water all day, or I have green tea, and I fix it myself. And when I have a headache, I put ice on my face, I try and fix it. And then, like, last resort is something. I don't run to a medication. And I think that, like, I don't know how common it is for other people, but I think that was something that I had to really rewire in my brain, because I was hospitalized a lot as a kid. And the minute you feel something, you get something. And that was really like rewiring how you're like coded. And it was difficult. And it was not natural. And it was something I didn't realize that I even had developed. But I realized, like, I need to be able to self, kind of like cure, or whatever you want to call it. And I learned.
Yes, that is one other very good lesson that I think a lot of people take away from this, is just becoming your own best advocate and figuring out ways to support your body that might not be quite mainstream Western medicine, because you've sort of had to look for alternative ways to tackle problems, because Western medicine does not have the magic bullet, as you've said, with this sickness. And it takes a lot of time and effort and shaping a different perspective within self, even, to truly heal, I think, from this. And I just commend you for how strong of a person you are. I always think God picks the strong ones with this one, and you're definitely proof to that. And just your resilience, like, you're so young. I like, when we first started talking, I was like, I don't know, I could tell you're younger than me, clearly, but like, my God, you're like 20 years younger than me. And to think about how young you were when this happened to you, and just the fortitude that you had to persevere and continue to go forward. Like, your high school years were consumed with this, I imagine. So, were you able to go to school? Were you able to function that way? Or you pretty much didn't have any of that experience at all? And
No.
yeah, I'm sorry.
I had no high school. I had, so 8th grade, I started having symptoms April 24th in 8th grade. I feel like I remember that date because it ended up being very significant. It was like my last day of school, basically.
Okay.
And then I never saw my high school again. I was there for like a few weeks in 9th grade. And then I never went back to high school. I went for a few weeks in senior year, but not to my school. I went to a school in Connecticut. My school was very, very disappointing during this. I have been in the same school since I was, pre-K. We all went to the same like preschool, very small town. I think like the biggest grade is 150. And that's the public school. Yeah. And you expect when you have such a small school that the classes are like, maximum 30 kids, that it's basically like a private school, but it's not. You would expect that when you have a problem, they would react with care, respect, and compassion. And it was quite the opposite. And this is a big reason that I think that I put an emphasis in my coaching on wanting to help families and not just the singular patient. It's a big part of why I think the family involvement is important, and especially for kids, because that was a huge, there's not even like a word for it. Like not being able to go to school, not being able to be with my friends. Like I remember, I was like missing out on everything. And I remember like the first thing I didn't get to do was the Washington, D.C. school trip in 8th grade. And I was like so devastated.
Oh.
And my grandma bought me like a sweatshirt that I really wanted and like tried to like cheer me up. And I was like so grateful. I still have the sweatshirt, still fits. And I'm very proud about that. And
you should be.
I just remember like not going on that trip, and like I grew up when like Snapchat first started and like Instagram and Facebook a little, but it's really like Instagram and Snapchat. You see everything.
Yes.
And everything. And I had a lot of friends. I was very social. I do not have those same friends anymore. And you realize who is actually there for you during hard times. But if I could have predicted this, which I couldn't have, but if I could have been asked at 14, do you think like, XYZ will be there for you in a hard time? I would have lost that bet. And I would have lost. I was so surprised about some of the people that just were gone. I don't know if it's because, you go from being the fun friend and, at the at school every day and hanging out every day after school and like, and going to the mall and going to the avenue and, walking around, going to the movies, going out to the little parties and, whatever. And then you're gone. But there's like a few girls who I hung out with like every single day. I kept in touch with 2 of them for years, still consider them friends, but not the way that I used to. There's one I never heard from again. And it is the most shocking thing, like the most shocking thing, like shocking.
Yes.
And then there's people who I was close to, but not like, best friends. And it's bizarre. And I had 2 guy friends who showed up for me so much when I was sick. And it was surprising that the people I could depend on weren't my girlfriends, and that my guys really showed up for me. And like, I really could depend on them. They drove 2.5 hours to visit me in a hospital I was in. And I was using a walker for a while during one of the bigger transitions in my recovery. And everyone was driving. I didn't get my license till very late. Like all my friends were driving at 16, and I live in a suburb, so like everyone gets their license on their birthday. Like you book that test. Yes, and yes. I was in a wheelchair on my birthday. Like I was nowhere near that. And I didn't get my license till I was like 19, I think. And so the point of the story is I couldn't drive. They were like, let's take you out to lunch. And we went out to lunch. We got pizza. I was using a walker. And like, instead of caring about like all the things that had changed, we just went to lunch. It didn't matter. Like they drove me. We had lunch. I saw their car. It was fun. Like I didn't understand in the moment why my girls didn't show up for me ever. Now I realize I don't want you if you don't want to show up for me. I don't need you
Yes.
in my life, and you don't get me.
That's right.
And it was a lesson that I learned young. And I think I truly believe everyone in life learns lessons. It's just a matter of when are you going to learn it.
Mm.
I learned mine young, like very, very young. And I think it's, it's a blessing, but sometimes it's my own curse because I'm so mature for my age that it's, it's like I said, it's a blessing and a curse. It's hard to relate to people my own age, but that's not always a bad thing. It's just a thing. And I truly believe everyone does grow from things like this or just things that they go through. It's just a matter of when they're going to go through it.
Yes. But I would think too, listening to you and sitting where I sit 20 years down the road from you, you're setting yourself up so much better for success, right? And like the lessons that you learn now are going to serve you that much more richly through the rest of your life versus somebody who's not going to learn it until they're 60 or 70. They'll still be greatly enriched and benefit. Obviously, we all do from the lessons that we learn, but I just feel like the harder ones, the sooner we learn them, again, the better set up for success we are, and the better then we're able to serve and give back and better the world and the space that we live in too, because we see things so differently. And that's partially when I first started talking to you, I struggled to decide. I was like, how old? I couldn't quite decide how old I thought you really were because you are very mature. And, I would like you to talk a little bit more too about really where this has led you, because from what I've learned of you, again, you are very wise beyond your years. And I think what you've experienced will help you serve people, like I said. And so now you've become a life coach and got certified that way. Can you talk a little bit more about what you're doing presently because of this experience that has happened to you?
Yeah. So sorry, what was the first part of your question?
Oh, that's okay. I'm just kind of thinking about how your own experiences now have set you up for really
yes.
where you're at presently. And just if you could talk a little bit more about what you're doing with yourself now as a result of your experiences. Because I just think, again, you are very wise for your years. And it's so evident to me being through what I've gone through 20 years down the road, like looking at you as a young person, I'm like, man, I'm excited for you to see what's going to happen with your career and what you're going to do for people and just the amount of lives that you're going to change and already probably have very much so just in being the person that you are, but how much more development that you're probably going to go through. And it's beautiful because you've got so much to give and so much understanding and so much empathy and compassion and what you've done with yourself, like the space that you've created for yourself. I just think fits you so well that you're going to just you set yourself up for a perfect life. It's kind of where I'm coming from.
You. Thank you. I don't know how to respond to that. That's like such a, just makes me feel like, just really, really recognized. And, I really appreciate that. I think that I really appreciate that.
That's God talking, by the way. It's me,
yeah.
But God's coming very loudly through me right now to tell you these words. So I just want you to know that.
I appreciate it. I was very confused, and I was very confused for a while in what I wanted to do. And I was just like, I don't know. The relationships I needed, I don't think like I was open to making them. I think that like you need to be open to receiving the things that you need, and it's a two-way street. And I think when I was sick, I was extremely isolated, and not all of that was on the other people. It was partially on me. I didn't feel good. I didn't feel I looked good. I didn't want people to see me in the way I was. So I isolated. It was the way I coped. And it's a bad habit. It's something that I naturally do. I think everyone has their way of coping. Some people drink, some people, like go out and party. Some people, do random things, like for, like some like boys, they'll like go on their little video games or whatever. Like for me, like my dad, like, when he's like having anxiety, he goes on a million runs. My mom does Pilates. For me, I isolate and I want to be alone. And I didn't know that was a habit I had until I got sick. And because I had never had such extreme stress. And I don't think my parents knew their habits so well until I got sick either. To be quite honest, my mom's isn't just Pilates. It's any exercise. She went through phases. It was spin, it was bar method, it was anything that got her moving in her mind. But the point is I was confused and I isolated a lot. And isolation is really bad when you're sick, in my opinion, because your mind is just moving a mile a minute. And my mind moves a mile a minute in good waves and bad waves, and it just moved. And the way it led me to this was I got involved with Global Lyme Alliance for one reason. I wanted help, and I also wanted to help. I felt alone, but I also felt like there has to be other people going through this. And like, if they can help me, I can help them back. Like, how can we help each other?
Yes.
And one of my friends made these bracelets, Sammy Strong bracelets, and gave them out in the community when I was like 15, maybe. And she gave them out in the community. And then we started raising money for Global Lyme Alliance. Long story short, Global Lyme Alliance was like my tether to the Lyme community. I saw a life coach when I turned 19, I think, or 20. I don't know, indifferent. And I felt like she was someone I could speak to without feeling analyzed. And I don't think all therapists make you feel analyzed, but I think that it's a different relationship than therapy.
Yes.
And I was in school at the time, and I've always had this big question mark over my career and over my purpose. And I think that I do this like exercise with myself a lot of whether like, what are the hours of my day going to? And like, I think it's like a silly little thing, but like when you're on Instagram or when you're on Google, like, what are you searching? Like, go through your history. What are you searching for? Because that's what your mind's at, more so than even what you're spending your time on. Because when you're searching freely, that's what you're thinking about. And I realized that healthcare is really what I enjoy, and I enjoy supporting other people. I realized how my free time was being spent. I get calls from people all the time. It's a friend of a friend. It's a friend's cousin's brother. And they were all telling me stories about how they were sick, how they were impacted, whether it be Lyme disease or some weird diagnosis that they don't feel is right. And more often than I can count, I was putting them in touch with a contact of mine, whether it be a integrative doctor that I thought could help. And, I made a call. They weren't. And this is something I have mixed feelings about is, I'm sure I'm not the only person who knows somebody and has helped them get into a doctor, but I also don't like that without that call, they'd be waiting 3 months to get into the doctor. So as much as I love making that call, I hate that that's the medical system. I hate it, that's such a bothersome thing. But of course I'm going to make the call and help them. I wish I could make the call for everyone on the waiting list, but that's not the way it works. But that's just a little, thing that I have that I don't like. But, so I realized I was doing that a lot. I also realized that I enjoyed it and I liked it. And I wasn't on the phone for 5 minutes. I was on the phone for 2 hours. And I started a blog while I was sick, and it was called Trapped, because that's all I could think. Trapped, 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 trapped. I was trapped in my body. I was trapped in my mind. I was trapped in my house. I was trapped in my bed. I was just trapped. And the blog was about having other people understand what it was like to be in a wheelchair. I was in a wheelchair while I was sick. I couldn't walk. I was immobile. And it was one of the blog posts was about basically like I was getting a ton of gifts from people when I was sick through the years. And it was like all this stuff I couldn't use. People would give like Baked by Melissa and cookies from Insomnia and all this stuff. And like I was on this sugar-free diet, and like my brother and my stepdad would be eating it. And like my mom would try and like pretend it didn't come to the house. And I'm like, I smell it. I know they're eating it. They would like go into the garage and eat it and like come in with like icing on their face. And I'm like, you animals, I hear you. Like, it's okay. You can eat it. But like, really? Someone got these like delicious cake pops, and I'm on this like dairy-free, sugar-free diet. And like, they think they're doing like the nicest thing ever by like sending me this like, $50 arrangement. And meanwhile, I can't have it. People would send me flowers when I'm in the hospital. Come to know you can't have fresh flowers in the hospital. They would send me food from my favorite restaurant that I can't eat. It was like torture. So I finally put this blog post up saying things to buy people, which I thought was genius. It didn't really change much, but I felt better. So that was another way I got into it. And the coaching came naturally. I thought it was a great idea. I was looking up ways to be in healthcare without becoming a doctor because I don't want to be a doctor. And I love it. I love it. I help other people. I do what I didn't have and what I couldn't have, or not couldn't, but I do everything that I needed when I was sick, but for other people. Yeah. And it's exactly what I think the community needs. And it is the most fulfilling thing that I could ever do, or that, I work in the finance sector, and it's more, having that call with somebody is the most fulfilling thing that I could ever do. And it's way more fulfilling than the biggest check on Wall Street. And it's my passion. It's something I poured my heart and soul into. Like, my Lyme coach is my baby. Yeah. And it's going to continue to be my baby. I think that the things that I want to see it grow into is the patient advocacy is something I'm really working on. And the coaching programs that I have are for people going through different things. And it's not just Lyme disease, it's chronic illness. It's people that are going through diagnosis, treatment, misdiagnosis. It's also for people going through big transitions in life, whether that's going back to work part-time, going back to school, college, high school, whatever it is, going back to, maybe you are a parent and you have not been able to do what you normally do with your kids. And you want to get back to being mommy, like mommy mode mommy. And you need help preserving your energy and using your energy, not only just for your kids, but for you too, so that you can function as a human. Because you're not just a mom, you're not just someone with Lyme, you're you. And you need to remember that and take care of that and really treasure that. So there's that. And there's also working with families, because you can have 20 people that want to support you, but they may not know any of the right words and any of the right things to say. And they're just driving you nuts. So working with everyone together and clearing the paths of communication, that's a big important part. Preparing for doctor's appointments, preparing for holidays when you're not going to know what kind of foods are there. Like, how do I navigate that awkward conversation? Well, let's make it not awkward. How can we the simpler things don't have to be so hard. Yes. There's a lot that can be done to be making it, very easy. And that's not everything has to be so hard.
Right. And that's what you lend so well, is because you've lived it. And so you're
Yes.
able to like really genuinely guide somebody through some of those really hard and awkward moments and figuring out how best to cope with the situation at hand. I love the three tenets that you have, and just really more of what you're aiming to focus on for people. And, for those who don't have Lyme or tick-borne illness, who are just listening for educational purposes, this is a really challenging illness, especially once it gets into your brain, to actually be able to think normally. And so you're like, oh, you would ask the doctor X, Y, and Z. And it's like, no, your brain, once you get there, you're like, and like, I couldn't even talk. I
Yeah.
couldn't remember words. I stuttered. I had a hard time just functioning as like a
Great
normal
job.
person. And so for you to be there for people, to have as an advocate, to help organize different thoughts, different questions, different things to think about, again, because you've lived it, how, again, to guide through the nutritional challenges. And I know we talked about it a little bit off camera, but just actually truly helping somebody figure out ways to still enjoy food in more of a limited capacity, right? Because a lot of times what we have to do to help body heal is getting rid of inflammation, but that means changing, again, our whole entire lifestyle. And how do you do that and still have appeal for it? Because like, somebody being told you can't eat gluten, dairy, or sugar ever again is going to initially be like, well, what am I supposed to eat?
My
And so
response was, what do I eat?
that's
Cardboard?
right. That's right. What
That's
am I
what I
supposed to eat? Water? Am I going to live on air? Like, no. And you just have to retrain
That's what
yourself.
I said to the doctor. I said, cardboard? What's left? What do I eat? It's
But
like,
as you've
I
learned,
was like, what do I eat? There's nothing. And then I learned there was a lot,
that's right.
actually.
That's
I
right.
mean, it's a lot. You adjust, you adapt, you learn. But the initial
right.
reaction is not pretty. And I'm transparent. I'll tell you right to your face. It's not easy.
That's right.
But you learn and you adapt and
That's right.
and you make it work. And I also I've worked with nutritionists. I tell them straight to their face, you need to change the way that you approach somebody, because telling somebody day one, you need to just tomorrow cut out X, Y, and Z isn't sustainable.
Yeah.
You need to know like that there can be a better way. Like maybe you take out dairy for a month.
Yeah.
Then we take out dairy and gluten.
Yes.
Then we take out sugar. I don't believe taking everything away at once is the best approach. I think doing it like I'm missing the word that I'm thinking of, but like kind of
Gradually.
I don't know, like gradually is what I'm thinking of. Yes.
Yeah.
Gradually doing it is so much better, and it will last longer.
That's right. It's
because
much more
I've done it, kind of ripping the wax off. And, if you do it gradually, it's so much easier.
Yes. Yes.
It just is. It's a fact. Like
That's
it
right.
is easier because you're already used to not eating the dairy. And like, there's so many alternatives. Like to this day, I will never have like certain things. Like I got so used to eating no gluten. I never have bread at the dinner table. Like, when you're out for dinner, they bring over the thing of bread. I never eat it ever.
Yes. Yes.
And like certain people in my family always have like all the bread, and they're like so jealous that I don't eat the bread. It's because I'm used to it. It's not because like I don't like bread. Who doesn't like bread? But I got used to not eating bread.
Yes. Yes.
It's all what you're used to.
I think as you go gradually too, like you give yourself opportunity to teach, to like backfill, right? Like we're going to take this one out. We're going to learn some different ways so that we can be in this space comfortably. And then, okay, good. We're going again. We're going. All right, I got this. And then, you can change something else. And so again, I also really like the part that you focus on with transition. We've talked a lot about that, I think, in some different areas, and how we have to transition many ways when we get becoming sick, transitioning into that space. Like you don't ever really want to accept that space, but like you've sort of got to transition into some different lifestyle changes and some new things to do for self to get yourself out of the space that you found yourself in. But then again, transitioning back into being a regular, normal, average human. Like, how do I do this again? I don't really remember because it's been so long. I've been not feeling well. And what do I do? How do I function? How do I maintain my energy? How do I get like a different space that way? It's very beautiful. And I'm really excited for you. And so if somebody wants to work with you, can you tell me like how do we go about finding you? Where can we do that? What does that really look like? Um, do you have ongoing programs for people? How do they get support from you?
Yeah. So you can reach me either through social media or on my website. It's mylymecoach.org. And you could either DM me or just book a call. I do free discovery calls and we can jump on a call. And if the times I have don't work for you, shoot me an email and I'll make a time that works for you work. Send me a time that works for you and I'll try and make it work. No problem. I have a holiday special going on, and it's basically like a bit of a shortened version of my normal packages. I know how hard it is to go through the holidays when you're sick. And that is why I have a holiday special, because I think that the holidays for me used to be the happiest time of the year. And I spent almost every holiday at some point in a hospital. Thanksgiving, Christmas, my birthday, Jewish holidays, like just holidays. And as the years went on, I stopped looking at it as this huge devastation to cry over and started looking at it as it's a day. It's a day in the year. And it's not about where you are and what you're doing. It's about who you're with and what you have. And it can either bring you immense pain and depression and sadness. And it did at points. And I'm not going to lie and sit here and say when I was in the hospital and not walking and not really eating, and it was Thanksgiving, that like I was smiling, and jumping, for joy. But I, a few months later was in the hospital for another holiday, and I had changed my perspective greatly because I had learned that I had my family with me and I had something that a lot of people in the hospital that I was in for that Thanksgiving didn't have, and that was a future. And that's something that is taken for granted by most of the general population.
Very much so. I think a lot of people kind of take a lot of things for granted, right? And when we're sick, we really get a whole different perspective as to like that's not necessarily something that's guaranteed to us. That's not something that we're always going to have. And it's much more important, as you're saying, to be more in the present and just really focus on what we have at hand versus like maybe the things that we're missing out on, or because it really is not. Are we ever really missing out on anything? I think you're kind of getting to that point. It's like it's more of how we perceive things and how we look at things that really matter. And I always think about that as like it doesn't necessarily matter what happens to you in life. It's about how you react to what happens to you. And I think that's kind of, really a big point here is that we can't change things, and kind of going back all the way to the beginning of just being okay with what has happened. We can't change things. We can't make things different. We can't undo things that have happened. What we can change is how we look at it, the relationship we have with those events, how we react inside, and how we feel about those things. That's what we have control over. And as hard as it can be, so hard to like pull ourselves back into that space, we have to maintain our sanity in a sense. But you've come into such a like you're like you're so smart. The knowledge that you have, the wisdom that you have, like you're so wise. And again, like you will do so much justice for people. You will help them so much through this process of figuring out how to adjust their internal speeds, how they are experiencing things, how they're feeling about things, how they're able to share, how they're able to conceptualize this so much better. And again, God picks the strong for a reason, because leaders go first. That's another thing that I always think about too, is we've gone through this first so that we can help others to come along and to see this differently and to have a healthier relationship and to have a less, hopefully, traumatic experience with this, to have a little bit more ease, to have the ability to go through this experience more gracefully than maybe what we were able to, because we didn't necessarily have somebody like you lighting the way for us to find ourselves, and you're just, again, feeling such a huge space. So I'm grateful to have you here to share your story, for people to know that you exist. Again, when you're going through this, it's very hard and very lonely and very isolating. And it is a place that you don't really want to be seen. Like, so many people, like, I didn't want to be seen like you. Like, I didn't really want people to see me in my weak, vulnerable space. And so I isolated too, but that is way worse. And you're just amplifying your symptoms in a sense, because your brain is left to go a mile a minute and think about all these different things versus having someone like you that you can bounce it off of and be like, it's going to be okay. This is normal. What you're feeling is normal. And imagine that. Imagine someone telling you like what you're feeling was normal. I kind of think maybe the guy Brian that you had talked about, like as an angel, like he kind of helped you maybe to feel like somewhat normal, right? Like, okay, what you're feeling is totally okay. Of course you should be feeling like this. And so you're, like I said, you're going to change so many people's lives for the better.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And something else that, like, I truly believe is not spoken about enough, that you've just really reminded me of, that I think people need to really hear, is that, and this is something in my coaching that I really, really, really get across and try and help people with, is the fact that you are you before you are any other label. Like, you are not Lyme disease. You are not a teacher. You are not any other label. You are you. I am Samantha. It's very easy to be labeled as the patient, as the, alcoholic, as the this, the that. But you are you, and it's very easy to lose yourself during a time like this, and it's very hard to maintain yourself. And it's something that I work on, is maintaining self-respect, maintaining self-care, maintaining a sense of, self. It's the hardest thing, and it's also it's the hardest thing to maintain. It's the easiest thing to lose. And that is a big principle in my beliefs.
And that's huge, because I think a lot of times, I think we were talking about this a little bit before we started recording, but people, it's sort of like the victim mentality. Like, you embrace these labels that we're given, like, oh, I'm sick. Oh, I'm this. Oh, I'm that. And then that becomes your reality. That becomes your lived existence. And that's really detrimental to self. You have to find self first.
Yes.
And stay connected there. And these other things are movable, right? They're not fixed, like these other labels that we define ourselves by. Oh, I'm a teacher. Oh, I'm a whatever. Well, what happens if you get a different job? We're no longer that like, these are removable and adjustable things. But you are always you. And I think I find a lot of the people that I interview maybe have lost themselves before they got sick. And I don't know. You were a lot younger. I think about this for younger people too. Like, I don't know if it's just for grownups or, like whatever, but like, we kind of lose ourself. And through the experience, you're able to find self again, or just maybe recreate self into a whole different being. It's a pretty wild ride in a sense, like from where you start to where you wind up, you're completely different people.
Oh yeah.
Maybe that's really what it is all about, is just figuring out who you really are, to embrace and to love and to forgive and to acknowledge. And that's really what you need to just be able to do, to good health in general.
Amen. Like 100%, like 1,000 times over.
Yeah. And so you're a perfect resource for people to come to learn how to do that.
Yeah.
And that's what you do. You help people learn how to be able to do that, It's fantastic. So wonderful. Well, thank you very much for sharing so much of yourself and your time here. I really, I know this is going to help so many people. And I just keep thinking about being 14 years old and how I was and how strong I was. And like, if I knew what was wrong with me and I wasn't able to get there, and just like how frustrating of an experience that must have been for your soul. And then, to kind of come completely full circle, to be able to have come out of the darkness from where you came to be here again healthy. Do you have any symptoms lingering still? Are you pretty much 100% back to good?
I would say I am not 100%. I am mostly better. I think the issues that I deal with are mostly as a result of the Lyme, not the Lyme itself. So it's kind of a difficult question to answer, but I would say I'm like a strong, you know, definitely. I don't know if this is the way most people define better, but I've always defined it by my functionality. And that's not how the average does it. And it's certainly not how a doctor does it. But for me, it's how I've done it. And it's, how am I getting through my days? How am I feeling at the end of the day? Am I feeling like I need to sleep for like 3 days? Or am I like going to wake up in the morning like fresh and ready to go? And that's what I do. And it's what I do for me, not for other people. I don't think other people should do that. And I should treat myself the way I evaluate that for others. But it's the one thing that I really do, value functionality a lot for myself. And it's sort of like a weird thing that I think I've, developed. But I would say I'm about like, 85, which is good. And I'm happy with it.
Like,
I think it gets a lot higher sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it gets a lot lower sometimes. I think it's how I treat my body and how the world treats it.
Yes. Yes. It will be for your forever. What am I thinking about? Like your check and balance system, right?
Yes.
So your forever accountability coach that you didn't necessarily want, but now you've got. And it just kind of reminds you of exactly, it's your gauge. Like, how are you treating your body? Is stress getting at you? Are you taking care of yourself? Are you getting enough sleep? Are you doing the right fundamentals to care for yourself and love yourself? And, I think 85% of the way there. And I would beg to differ in that you're probably like 120% in some areas,
Yes.
from whence you started, and to get to 85% after being in a wheelchair, for God's sake, like that's fantastic. Like you're moving again, you walk around. I see that you're fully mobile and like you're able to do things again. So that's huge.
That's why I put a high value on functionality.
Yeah, tremendously, for sure. And that's fair. I mean, let's be practical when we put a ruler against ourselves. Like, what are we actually measuring ourselves up to, right? Like, you're functioning. That's fantastic. You're giving back. You're able to participate in life. You have quality of life again. You have a boyfriend. You have a family. Like, like you're able to be a contributing member again. And that's huge.
I'm sitting up right now. I'm talking. My eyes are blinking. I'm breathing. I'm eating.
That's right.
I'm moving. Like, that is all very far from where I was 7 years ago or 10 years ago. It's a whirlwind. So functionality is my measure.
Yeah.
And I think it's a lot of other people's measures too.
It should be. Absolutely.
Or it should be. I don't know. Yeah.
It really should be. And just the fact that you've come this far is, I mean, a miracle. Let's use the word that really is a miracle, that you're still here, that you're still alive. just even that fact alone, because let's not kid, like this thing can take people out. This can kill people. Unfortunately, people sometimes cancel their own lives out because it's just a horrible existence. And so what you've come
It really
through,
is.
people can hardly even begin to imagine. And I'm really proud of you for
Thank
what
you.
that's worth. Yes. Yes. So again, thank you very much for your vulnerability. And if you are interested to reach Samantha, feel free to reach out to her on social media. You can find her under My Lyme Coach. And I think you think you go by Samantha My Lyme Coach on, or do you go by My Lyme Coach on Instagram?
My Lyme coach org.
No, that I know, but on Instagram, what's your handle? I'm sorry.
I don't even know. I'm pretty sure it's my Lyme coach org. Let me check.
I'm looking.
That's great. I don't even know it.
It is. You're
It's
right.
my Lyme coach org. Yeah.
Yep. You're right. And so you can reach out to her there and schedule an appointment. I would encourage you to, because again, she has a wealth of knowledge. She's got personal experience. She's got professional training. She's got the best of both worlds coming together to deliver a package to people that will really help you find your way and have a successful or a more successful pass at healing your body and getting yourself through this time of difficulty with Lyme and tick-borne illness. Thank you, Samantha.
Thank you.
Totally. I can't wait to share this. You have a really good day.
You too.
Thank you.